Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Eden Zero, Chapter 104. And yeah, I know I'm giving you guys this. I know I'm giving you guys this review from a day earlier than what I normally do, but I've kind of got some business to kind of take care of tomorrow. So yeah, I don't know, like, I mean it's not too major, but I don't know when I'd be able to like find the time to actually do the review tomorrow. But yeah, guys, with that said, Eden Zero, chapter 104. So, the big thing with this chapter is that Elsie spills the beans on what happened to Ziggy. And although the details themselves are left very vague and ominous, as of right now, it does seem like it does it does seem like we're basically going for a bit of a Seth Anderson route of a malicious computer program or ether having taken over Ziggy's consciousness or his mind or whatnot. And it's a nice way for Mashima to have his cake and eat it too, in the sense where it leaves open the door to save Ziggy while at the same time showing that a conflict with him is unavoidable, which also gave us some great character development on Shiki's part by showing exactly what I wanted to see last week, which is him becoming more resolute and affirmative in his actions as captain of the Eden Zero. And it's one of those things where I'm not going to say that pretty much that Shiki was never acting like a captain before or anything like that, or that, but it's almost one of those things where the basically role of a leader always felt like, oh, he always treated the role as a leader as kind of an inconsequential thing, and he just kind of cared more just about making sure his friends and his friends were safe and whatnot. So it's that kind of thing where he just didn't really care all that much about like stepping into the leadership role. He just cared about saving his friends. But now, after having faced down Draken Joe and Ziggy, he's basically fully embraced the responsibilities and hardships that come with being a captain now. And also, just the fact that Ziggy retains the drive and will to find Mother shows he's not. Again, it shows he's not completely lost. Like the fact that Ziggy has maintained his will to find Mother, like, shows he's still whatever's happened to him, a part of his old self is still awake in there somehow. It's just a matter of how it's being going to be brought out in the end. um, Now, one thing this chapter does is it builds more on the connection and repertoire between Ziggy and Elsie, which is also good in showing a deeper connection between her and the Starshines, as also shown with how easily she countered Homura in her mock duel, which again shows that when Valkyrie was alive, her, like, Valkyrie and Elsie had more than a couple sparring sessions, that's for sure. And just like and just kind of seeing just the back and forth between the Starshines and Elsie, it was just a very nice and simple scene that just showed the connection between the characters, and I can kind of appreciate that because, well, it's one of those things where when Elsie was first introduced, it was more than obvious that it was already said that she had a connection that she already had a connection to Ziggy and whatnot, but we never really got the full, like, a lot deeper into it beyond that. But now, like, this chapter gave us a lot more of that kind of deeper connection to Ziggy and whatnot, and I can kind of appreciate it for that. The only thing this chapter lacked in terms of giving us Elsie's history, though, that I personally wanted to know, is the circumstances of how she became a member of the Eurasian Space Galactica. Because right now, of all things about Elsie, that's the $1,000,000 question I'm asking myself right now. Like, how did she end up in a I know she's a pirate, she's a criminal and whatnot, but how did she end up being associated with the Eurasian Space Galactica of all people? But I'm sure it's one of those ones where there's a time and place for basically for every reveal, and with it, I'm sure we'll also explore her relationship with the other demon generals at some point too. So yeah, it's one of those things where I wanted to see more, but I'm willing to wait as well. Um, and we've often compared Elsie to Urza through obvious physical similarities, but can we just take a moment to say that this chapter kind of exposes her a little bit, like, to be a little bit like Luffy, just in the way her crewmates outer is having zero ability to navigate and maintain a ship. Like seriously, like I know comparing series isn't fair, but really that really just the way her crewmates outed her, that was basically a total like that kind of just exposes her as like a total like Luffy, just from how just I don't want to say incompetent, but just how like mismanaged she can be when it comes to being an actual like actually maintaining our ship and whatnot. Like if those guys weren't around, then and now just like Luffy, if those guys weren't around, then she would be lost. She would be alone. She wouldn't even know where to go. So yeah. Um, of course, the chapter ends with and also now obviously one other thing to talk about here is is like I said with the chapter, of course, obviously opens with our gratuitous Mashima fan service shot with basically Homer, Rebecca, and Elsie in the bath together, and yeah, it's again one of those things where it is mostly fan service, but I do continue, again, I've said this before, but I do continue to like how Mashima does find new ways in order to use his fan service in Zero, like his fan service always does seem to have a point, whereas compared to, again, I hate to compare the two, but compared to Fairy Tail, like the fan service was there just for fan service, but with Eden Zero, he's kind of using it a little bit for a purpose, I guess, even though it is kind of like just, yeah, it is fan servicey. Now the other thing we also learn in this chapter is that we dive more into just how we dive a lot more into just the circumstances of what happened after like Ziggy's failed attempt to find Mother, and how the escape pod who I don't know how escape pod that escaped back then was what probably contained Pino back then, and yeah, I again, it's kind of one of those things where it definitely makes sense, but I would like to, I wonder what the circumstances were of her, how she ended up in the past. That's the curious thing for me, because unless it had to do with those, the only thing I can think of is the only thing I can think there in terms of how Pino ended up escaping into the past is she ended up in some kind of time warp, or some kind of like chronophage time, where she ended up or something happened with the chronophages, something like that. Because again, they're kind of, yeah, chronophages right now are kind of the entity who haven't been touched on much, but you can still kind of feel like they're a presence in this series, and I almost wonder if how Pino ended up in the past had something to do with the chronophages or something like that, because it just kind of feels like that's the only way it could have happened. So yeah. Of course, the chapter ends because it would also make sense in terms of how Pino doesn't have much of a memory of this. So yeah, that's another interesting thing as well. Of course, the chapter ends with our heroes basically entering Dragonfall, the pathway to the Sakura cosmos. And I'm not gonna lie, even though it was pretty much the next logical destination for our heroes to be heading after the encounter with Ziggy, the fact that we've reached this point now feels oddly surreal. Like, holy crap, we're taking the next major leap in the story. And if this first major character arc that we've gone through was anything to go off of, I am all in for what Mashima has in store when our heroes enter the Sakura cosmos, because he's definitely built my trust enough to the point where I can say there's going to be a major escalation in the threats our heroes are going to have to face when they get there, and it's not just going to be limited to Ziggy and the Dark Stars. Like, I think when it comes to what our heroes are going to have to face there, it's going to be all manner of threats, both physical, mental, and just the journey's going to take a toll on them. That much I know for sure. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Crunchyroll. Dead Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.